Good day, everyone. We are the Group 7 of Psychological Statistics from 202P, and this group consists of me, Ayuro Reyaan, Cabos Chona, Dominguez Dayan, Mayo Faye, Rodriguez Rosel, and lastly, Tosok Aliana. And we're about to teach you on how to solve the hypothesis testing using chi-square, one-way analysis of variance, and two-way analysis of variance on both manual and software applications, which is Excel and SPSS. So without any further ado, let's start.
Good day, everyone. I am Rosel, a second year psychology student in Jose Rizal University. Today we'll dive into hypothesis testing using the chi-square test. So, we'll explore its steps, work through a sample problem, and interpret results effectively. But I just want to find out first if you have any idea before on how to solve chi-square. If not, do you know why we used it? So let me explain it to you. We use chi-square to determine if a difference between observed data and expected data is due to chance or if it is due to a relationship between the variables you're studying. So now that you know what chi-square is, let's now dig in with our topic. So here is a sample problem that we're gonna find out later on how to solve it. So our sample problem involves investigating whether preferred strategies for stress differ by age group. We want to test if coping strategies are independent of age at the zero point zero 0.05 level of significance. Excuse me for the noise, guys. I'm sorry. So here is the observed data we'll be using. But first, let me show you the steps in calculating the chi-square. So the chi-square calculation involves six main steps, which is to formulate the hypothesis, calculate the expected values, next is calculate the chi-square, and step 4 is find the degrees of freedom, and the fifth step is compare the calculated chi-square value to the tabular value that we're gonna find out which is which later on. And then the last one is make a decision on the null hypothesis. So let's go through this one by one. So the null hypothesis states there is no significant relationship between coping strategies and age, while the alternative hypothesis suggests a significant relationship exists. Before this tutorial ends, we're gonna find out whether to accept or reject null hypothesis. So for our next step, this shows how to get the expected value from the observed value using the formula expected value equals row total plus column total, multiplied by column total divided by the grand total. So after this, we're gonna know which is which. So here's the table that I already computed, but don't worry, I'm gonna explain this to you. So the first table, which is on the left side, is our observed values, and the second one is our expected values. So the highlighted numbers is our example for our first data in expected values table. 125 is the number for our first row, and 105 is the first column total, and 300 is our grand total, which is the equal summation of all the rows and columns. So to get our expected value, we're gonna need all of these numbers. So this one, as you can see, the expected values are already calculated. So how do I get these numbers? First, to calculate 43.75 from our expected values, I multiplied both the number in the row and column that is associated in problem focused, which is 125 from the row and 105 from the column, which will be divided with 300, our grand total, and it is gonna be equal to 43.75. So you're gonna need to do all of that in their respective own row and columns until you complete the table. So this is how our expected value table should be look like if it is already completed. And this is our table for our observed values. We're gonna need this one in calculating our chi-square, which is the steps that we're now making. So to calculate chi-square, we're gonna need all the numbers from both our observed and expected values. So this, we're gonna need all of that numbers, not just the highlighted one, with the exception of the total column. We're just gonna need the 35 to 30, and the total is we're not gonna need that. This is for our expected value table. We're gonna need all of that also. And then our chi-square table should be look like this one, which is we need our observed values, expected values, their difference, the squared of their difference, and most importantly, the squared of our observed values minus expected values divided by the expected value itself. So this is how it's gonna look like. After that, we'll move on and calculating our chi-square. This is the completed table, guys. As you can see, I already computed it before. So the formula that we're gonna need is shown here, which is the summation of squared of observed values minus the expected values divided by expected value, which is the last row in this table, as you can see here on the right side. And then at the bottom, we're gonna see chi-square calculated. So that is 6.56, the summation of all the numbers in the last row. So after that, let's move on to our next step, which is finding out our degree of freedom. So we have our distribution table right here. So formula for this one is degrees of freedom equals the total number of columns minus 1 multiplied by the total number of rows. So we're gonna need to know uh, how many total number of columns and rows we're gonna have. So for a DF, our column is 3 and our row is also 3. So we're gonna solve it like that. 3 minus 1, which is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4, so our DF is 4. So here is our DF, as you can see at the highlighted below the critical value 0.05. Our DF is 9.49. So the next step, we're almost done, guys. So we'll compare the calculated chi-square to the x-squared tabular, to the chi-square tabular, or from the DF that the table shown you before. So with our significance level 0.05, our calculated chi-square is 6.56, and our x-squared tabular is 9.49. So in chi-square, whenever our calculated chi-square is greater than tabular values, we can state that our null hypothesis is rejected. However, with these results, we can see that our calculated chi-square is less than the tabular. So we fail to reject our null hypothesis. So for our decision, our statement will be null hypothesis. There is no significant relationship between coping strategies for stress and age. So that ends this tutorial. Should you have any other questions regarding this tutorial, you can also watch other videos from this from this tutorial. So I hope you learned something about calculating chi-square, and I'm sorry for the noise that you have been hearing earlier.